All right, let's get right into it. We usually think of death as, well, the end. But what if it isn't? What if it's actually a new beginning? Drawing from the incredible work of Mary Roach, this explainer is all about the surprising, often heroic careers that only start after our lives are over.
You gotta love this quote, right? From the very start, Roach just completely changes the vibe. It's funny, it's a little weird, and it basically tells us, hey, let's talk about this thing we never ever talk about. Instead of it being all grim and scary, it's about being curious. It's like she's inviting us to explore this totally bizarre, hidden world. And that's really the heart of it. The idea that for some people, their biggest contributions to the world happen after they're gone. They become these silent partners, helping us make some of the biggest leaps in science and medicine. So let's check out their postmortem resumes. First career up on the list, and it's a big one, maybe the most important one of all. The cadaver as the first and most essential teacher for anyone who wants to heal the living. Think about this for a second. It's a huge catch-22 in medicine, right? If you want to be a surgeon, you absolutely have to practice. But how do you practice something where one little slip up could, kill someone? Where do you even start? The stakes couldn't be higher. Before practicing on cadavers was common, surgeons just learned on the job, on living people. The source material talks about this one surgeon, Bransby Cooper, fumbling through a simple operation for an hour. The details are gruesome, and the patient died. Now, compare that to today, where a surgeon can practice a super complex facelift on a cadaver head over and over again. They learn every tiny muscle and nerve with zero risk to a living person. The difference is just night and day. And this quote from the 1800s just nails it. It's not a nice to have, it's an absolute must. You can't be a good surgeon without this. The dead literally provide the roadmap for operating on the living safely and effectively. But, getting these silent teachers has a pretty dark past. For a long, long time, it wasn't about donation. There was this whole shady underworld of resurrectionists, basically grave robbers. And it got even worse, like with the Burke and Hare murders, where they were literally killing people to sell their bodies to medical schools. And that's why the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act in 1968 was such a game changer. It took this awful criminal business and turned it into what it is today, a completely voluntary, noble choice. All right, so from the operating room, let's shift gears to a career you have probably never thought of. It's a bit grim, but it has saved an unbelievable number of lives. The job? Being the original crash test dummy. So here's the thing. A plastic dummy is great at measuring force. It can tell you, hey, I just got hit with 1,000 pounds of force. But so what? Is that a minor bruise, a few broken ribs? Is it instantly fatal? The numbers don't mean anything without context. You need data from real human bodies to understand what those forces actually do. The cadavers are what make the dummies useful. And what this research uncovered was just terrifying. Back in the day, steering columns didn't collapse. They were basically solid steel rods pointed right at the driver's chest. So in a crash, they became spears. And it was the data from cadaver impacts that proved just how deadly this design really was. Just look at this list. Padded dashboards, airbags, three-point seatbelts. This isn't optional stuff. This is the basic safety tech in every car now. And every single item on this list exists because scientists were able to study what happens to a real human body in a crash. We totally take it for granted, but it's a direct result of this work. And if you're thinking, wow, this sounds really gruesome, well, here's the payoff. Over 8,500 lives saved. Every single year. That is not a small number. That's a stadium full of people who get to go home to their families because of this research. It's just a staggering legacy. So, we've seen how the dead help prevent future accidents. But what's really wild is that sometimes they're the only ones who can solve a mystery from the past. This brings us to our third career, the final witness. Okay, picture this. A plane goes down. It's a massive, chaotic scene. Debris is everywhere. And what if the black box, the flight recorder, is destroyed or just doesn't have the answers? What do? Well, investigators turn to the only witnesses left. A perfect example is the TWA Flight 800 disaster in 1996. Right away, theories were flying everywhere. Was it a terrorist bomb, a missile? The clues weren't just in the wreckage of the plane. The real story, it turned out, was written on the bodies of the passengers. This is so fascinating. To make sense of something so horrible, they have to turn it into data. They use this color code system. So a red code meant extreme trauma. Now, if a bomb had gone off, you'd expect to see a whole bunch of red victims all clustered together right where the bomb was. But that's not what they saw with Flight 800. The pattern was different. So this is how the injury analyst works. First, they literally plot on a map where every body was found. Then they assign that color code. And then the real detective work begins. They look for patterns. For instance, certain injuries, like tears in the aorta, are a dead giveaway for hitting water at an incredible speed. But shrapnel wounds, that tells a totally different story. That points to a bomb. The bodies literally tell the story of what happened to them. And so the verdict from these final witnesses was crystal clear. The pattern of injuries told them it wasn't a bomb. It was a massive mechanical failure. The center fuel tank exploded, and the plane broke apart in the air. The bodies of the victims are what solved the mystery and finally gave answers to a national tragedy. So you've got the teacher, the safety pioneer, the witness, all these incredible careers, and they all boil down to one single decision, which, brings it back to us and a choice we all have to think about for ourselves. When it comes to the end, there are kind of two ways to look at it. There's the traditional path, burial, cremation, which is about honoring the past. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what Mary Roach's work really shines a light on is this other path. Donating your body isn't just about what happens to your remains. It's about reframing it as one last, incredible act of giving something back. It's a gift to the future. And just think about the ripple effect of that one gift. A single person's donation could help train a whole new generation of surgeons who go on to save thousands of lives. It could help engineers create a safety feature that saves countless people in car crashes. It's a legacy that just keeps going, keeps helping people, long after you're gone. There's this line at the end of Mary Roach's book where she thanks the cadavers she worked with during her research. It's so simple, but it just hits you. You are dead, but you're not forgotten. That pretty much sums this whole thing up, right? Through this silent work, these anonymous people find a unique kind of immortality. And that really leaves us with one last thought. We've seen just how much the dead have done for the living. So the question I guess we can all ask ourselves is, when our own story comes to an end, what do we want our final contribution to be?